負責組織舉辦一次佛學講座，進行學術交流同埋弘揚佛法。今日到會嘅非常踴躍，真係一個盛會難逢。本人謹代表夏威夷中華佛教總會同埋潭華寺嘅全體同仁，表示熱烈嘅祝賀和熱烈嘅歡迎。在此，首先值得讚揚嘅係負責組織呢一次嘅學術交流廈大嘅幾位教授同埋學者。因為我唔識得講英文，冇辦法講出佢哋嘅尊姓大名，請原諒。佢哋從組織嘅呢一次嘅學習講座嘅時間安排，到處奔波聯繫，做咗好多深入細緻嘅工作，付出咗唔少嘅心血，乃至昨日佢哋親自嚟到呢度佈置呢個會堂，搬台搬凳，親力親為，實在係感人嘅。本人衷心希望通過呢一次嘅佛學講座，進行學術交流，共同努力，把弘揚佛法嘅事業推向一步，使到更多人信佛、學佛，乃至成佛。善惡兩業係由人做出嚟嘅，善惡兩業係相對嘅，善業增長一分，惡業就消滅一分。如果人人都從淨化社會人心嗰度做起，就可以將呢個多災多難嘅娑婆世界變為人間淨土，真正達到離苦得樂。最後預祝呢一次學習講座圓滿成功，法喜充滿。謝謝，阿彌陀佛。
That's our ceremony, David Chap. Honored guest speaker, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you today. With all the violence in today's society, it is refreshing to know that there are still people like you out there who are still interested in living and dying Buddhist culture. It will be people like you who will make a difference in mankind. It will be people like you who can help to influence the future young generation and guide them into a more peaceful world. I'm happy that the Hawaiian Chinese Buddhist Society can participate in the seminar today. We will do our small part by trying to contribute whatever it takes. I would like to wish you all good health, peace, and may the Buddha light shine on you. Om Tvat.
As you perhaps are aware from just coming here this morning, the main sanctuary is behind me, and we would ask everyone not to go there with food, and if you go, to go in a worshipful attitude, because it is today, as in every day, people go there to meditate or to honor the Buddha. But please find some occasion to go in if you can. They have a marvelous wooden statue of Guanyin Bodhisattva that has 1,000 arms and 1,000 eyes, an eye in the palm of each hand, to see the troubles and the problems of the world, and then the hands to do something to help the problems of the world, which is somewhat, I think, what the goal of this project is, to have both an understanding and to be of some help. In addition, on either side are guardian bodhisattvas, Reito and Guangzhou. And in addition to that main sanctuary, on the side, as you go in, if you go in this door, you will be able to see an altar, I think, to the Buddha of healing. And relevant to our topic, we have memorial halls in all Buddhist temples. They're often found behind or in some special place, a quiet place where memorial tablets can be placed. And here we actually have two locations. At the very back of the sanctuary, there's stairway you find when you go through the office, and another just here as you go out the door, just to your right. It's facing on this. It's a new addition to that. The street side of the building. Upstairs is a section where there are memorial tablets. So perhaps at lunchtime you can get a guide to take you up there to see that. Again, I want to begin not only by thanking our hosts, but also our supporters, the Hawaii Committee for Humanities, which enables this conversation to go on between scholars and community groups and community leaders such as yourself. And I think I see Robert Buss once again. See, they work all week and then they come and attend their functions on the weekend. So he's here again. And also the summer school for providing the wonderful publicity. In particular, we want to thank our visitors who've traveled from afar. And we begin our morning really with a leader in Chinese Buddhism, not just for Hawaiian Buddhists, but for San Francisco Buddhists, where he is, but in Chinese Buddhists and non-Chinese Buddhists throughout the Buddhist world. He's an international figure, gives lectures at many locations. He himself embodies different countries because I think he grew up in Taiwan, graduated from Taiwan National University, then has his PhD from UC Berkeley, which is a country of its own, I heard, right? UC Berkeley is a world of its own, maybe more than a country, a world of its own in philosophy, but he has really dedicated his life for more than a decade to being of service to humanity. And it's his full-time work to share the insights that he has received and from his teacher. A number of years ago, we were privileged to have Yogi C.M. Chun visit Hawaii, and Dr. Lin has been his disciple for many, many years and carries on his work. So it was with great honor. By the way, he's also a prolific author as well as speaker, and I think there are some booklets out on the table. I hope you make sure you get some and some copies of his talk there. He will be with us through the day, has kindly agreed to then at the end of the day respond to our whole day's activities and kind of reflect on them and sum them up. So we are very, very indebted to Dr. Yutong Lin of San Francisco. Please help join me in welcoming.
Venerable Sangha, my Buddhist friends, crossing the gate of death in Chinese Buddhist culture. This talk has 5 parts. The first part is an overview of Chinese Buddhist culture, and the second part is about the Chinese Buddhist view of dying, death, and life after death. And then the third part is about rituals and activities related to death in Chinese Buddhist culture. And then the fourth part is about activities related to death and ancestors in general. And finally, I would like to talk about Buddhist accomplishments as revealed through marvelous manners of death. Since the time is short and the article is sort of long, so I'll just keep on reading it and leave the question and answer up at the end. Thank you. An overview of Chinese Buddhist culture. Please. Oh, use this one instead. So what should I do? Holding it or just leave it there? Leave it right. Okay. Traditionally, there are 10 schools of Buddhism in China, and 8 of them belong to Mahayana Buddhism. 4 of them are practical in the sense that they possess special practices which are actually practiced by many followers. These are Pure Land School, Tantra School, Chan School, also known as Zen School, following the Japanese pronunciation, and Sira School. In Chinese, they are the Jinghu Zhong, Mi Zhong, Chan Zhong, 以及律宗. The Pure Land School, with its emphasis on the chanting practice, has been most popular. Nowadays, the meditation practices of Tibetan Tantra and those of the Southern tradition, by Southern tradition I mean 小乘, 南传的, are embraced by a growing number of Chinese Buddhists. Upon closer examination, many Chinese Buddhists, in the sense that they are considered by others as well as by themselves to be followers of the Buddhist religion, practice a mixture of Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. This is evident not only from what deities they worship on the altar and the religious or health practices they adopt, but also from their outlook and way of life. This is in fact a prominent feature of Chinese Buddhist culture over the ages. In the United States of America, Chinese Buddhists came from and are rooted in the traditions of mainland China, Taiwan, and Southeastern Asian countries. The prominent features of the present scene may be classified into Pure Land practice, Tantric practice, and meditation practice. Under meditation practice, I mean including Chan practice and Vipassana practices. The Chinese Buddhist view of dying, death, and life after death. Basically, the Chinese Buddhist view of dying, death, and life after death follows the Buddhist teachings. It may be simply described as follows. Due to ignorance and attachment, sentient beings constantly engage in self-centered activities. Consequently, by the force of such activities called karma, they are helplessly engulfed in transmigration within the 6 realms of suffering. These 6 realms are heavens, asuras, humans, animals, hungry ghosts, and hell beings. Through understanding the Buddhist teaching and realizing their significance by devoted practice, one may achieve transcendence from this cycle of transmigration. The transcendental states are classified as Sravaka, Pratika Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and Buddhas. So in Chinese they are 声闻、缘觉、菩萨、佛。 one may achieve transcendental states in this or future life. Human life is concurrent and inseparable from two factors, consciousness and warmth. In the traditional teaching, they say, life, consciousness, and warmth, these three are always together. 受、暖、质，这三个是一直在一起。Dying is a gradual process, thereby the consciousness completely separates from the body. Death occurs when the body completely lost its awareness and temperature. Of course, we know that this is not the Western medical standard at this time. People who have achieved transcendental states in life are no longer subject to transmigration. However, they may choose to take rebirth in order to further their training on the Buddhist path or to help sentient beings advance on the path. People who have not achieved such transcendence may still obtain rebirth in the Buddha's Pure Land through the blessing of Buddha. Upon death, very good persons go to Buddha's Pure Land or heavens at once, and very bad persons fall into hell immediately. For most people, the consciousness will be in a limbo state for an indefinite period of no more than 49 days. In this state, usually in Chinese it's called Zhongyi, or in Tibetan Buddhism, the Bardo state, the consciousness experiences a floating sequence of scenes without the power to choose. Every 7 days during this period, the consciousness will experience a dying process. This period ends when the consciousness is drawn by its karma and takes rebirth in one of the 6 realms. According to this view, death may be considered as a gate through which the consciousness departs from one life and begins the journey to a new life. Hence, the title of this article uses the term, the gate of death. Occasionally, people revive after having lost all vital signs and been officially pronounced dead. Hence, death is not always a one-way passage, but sometimes a revolving door. The part of the body where warmth lingers till the rest of the body has become cold is also called the gate of death, in the sense that the consciousness finally leaves the body through this spot, and its relative position on the body is believed to indicate which realm the consciousness is migrating to. In general, the higher spots on the body indicate better realms, and the lower ones indicate worse realms. So if the last part is the soul, usually it's believed that that person goes down to hell. And if it's the top of the head, either heaven or Pure Land. The popular Chinese belief describes one's death as follows. When the time of death comes, ox-headed and horse-headed delegates, 牛头马面, of Yanluo, the Chief Justice of the 10 judges in hell, will lead one's soul across the Naihe Bridge, which extends over the boundary of life and death to hell. There, one will be judged according to one's karma and sentenced to rebirth in one of the 6 realms. Before one's rebirth, one will be given a mengpo tang, mengpo soup, to drink, and thereby one's memory of one's past life is obliterated. This popular belief is not formally embraced by Chinese Buddhists. Nevertheless, the rituals and festivals related to the deceased and ghosts are often based also on this popular belief. Life is impermanent with suffering lurking, and the suffering of transmigrating in the cycle of life and death is beyond comprehension. Buddha achieved liberation from this vicious cycle and then pointed out the path towards such liberation for all sentient beings. Buddha teaches that our self-centered way of life can be unlearned, and that the root of suffering, a sense of self, can be eradicated by the wisdom insight of the conditional nature of all phenomena. Buddha teaches practices that will eventually restore one's original purity. Some of these practices aim at gaining rebirth in the Buddha's Pure Land at the time of death, while others aim at achieving enlightenment within this lifetime or in some future life. Buddhist liberation is not only transcendence beyond transmigration in the 6 realms of suffering, but also a perfect union of fully developed wisdom and compassion. To a Buddhist, life is an opportunity to work for transcendence beyond transmigration, for awakening to our original purity, for full development of our innate potentials, and for compassionate service to all sentient beings. People who let their time and energies be tied down by self-centered needs and desires will not only lose such a wonderful opportunity, but also be doomed to continue their suffering in transmigration. To a Buddhist, death is a reminder of impermanence, of the preciousness of life, of the need to be diligent in Buddhist practice. It is also a teacher of complete renunciation, of no attachment, of appreciation and gratitude, and of purity beyond worldly concerns and considerations. Death is the ultimate test of one's lifelong training in Buddhist practices. Many ancient Chinese practitioners demonstrated their accomplishments through their marvelous ways of crossing the gate of death. That's part 1. Part 2, okay. Now the third part is on rituals and activities related to death in Chinese Buddhist culture. Rituals and activities related to death are adopted by Chinese Buddhists according to their belief, the instructions they seek from Buddhist teachers, and the tradition they live in. In case of devout Buddhists, they will follow the practices they have long been used to, and the inclusion of popular non-Buddhist practices will be less. For ordinary Buddhists, the rituals and activities adopted are usually the ones maintained by the professionals, and these are often mixed with practices of Taoist traditions. The basic principle underlying the rituals and activities related to death is twofold: purification of bad karmas and accumulation of merits. Bad karmas may drag one down to undesirable realms, while lack of merits will prevent one from getting a good rebirth or attaining transcendence from transmigration. According to the laws of cause and effect, worldly activities will yield only worldly results. Hence, only merits imbued with the spirit of Buddhism will lead to transcendental consequences. In other words, charity done with selfish motivation may help one go to heavenly realms after death, but cannot pull one out of transmigration. Only services rendered in a selfless and compassionate way will add to the merits credited for liberation. In general, the activities related to death may be classified into rituals of elevation and acts of merits. The merits thus generated are dedicated first to the enlightenment of all sentient beings, and then to the well-being of the deceased. Rituals of elevation usually consist of chanting with the accompaniment of ritual musical instruments, of sutras, mantras, and holy names of Buddhas, prostrations, offering of candles, flowers, incense, and all sorts of food and drink. Prayers of repentance on behalf of the deceased is also an essential part of these rituals. For this kind of occasions, the most commonly recited sutras are Amitabha Sutra, the Heart Sutra, the Diamond Sutra, and the Earth Treasure Sutra. 阿弥陀经、心经、金刚经以及地藏经. These rituals are usually conducted by professionals who may or may not belong to the Sangha. Sometimes family members and friends also conduct in private chanting and prostration for the deceased. Acts of merit may include donations to monasteries or nunneries, monks and nuns, and charity, free distribution of sutras and books on Buddhism, releasing of endangered lives to freedom, voluntary services rendered to the sick and needy in orphanages, hospitals, hospices, and convalescent homes. Of course, these kind of services are usually not done immediately after there's a death in the family. But we can do it afterwards and continue to dedicate the merits to the deceased. In the United States, some areas have a large Chinese community. For example, the areas surrounding New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Jose, respectively. In these areas, it is relatively easy to obtain professional as well as voluntary help on matters related to dying and death from Chinese Buddhist communities. There are Chinese monasteries, monks and nuns, and groups of lay Buddhists organized to help dying persons by chanting Amitabha near the bedside. In New York area, there is even a Buddhist pagoda for ashes, Linghu-ta. For Chinese who reside outside these areas, they often have to seek help from relatives and friends in these areas or back home in Taiwan, Hong Kong, etc. The help sought is often for some professionals to perform some rituals of elevation or to conduct some acts of merit, like the releasing of lives to freedom. Subsection 3.1, Rituals and activities related to dying. To Buddhists who are keenly aware of impermanence, living is concurrent with dying. Hence, as preparation for transcendence from transmigration, they would try to accumulate as much merit as possible in daily life. Some would even renounce worldly activities completely and devote their time and energies exclusively to Buddhist practice and compassionate service. Besides the meritorious activities mentioned above, some Buddhists would pay special attention to helping people who encounter death of loved ones. They would offer to help out, especially by chanting the name of Amitabha Buddha near the dying person. In so doing, they not only invoke the blessing of Buddha, provide support and serenity to the situation, but also learn for themselves how to face death in tranquility. In Taiwan, there are many voluntary service groups, usually called Help Chant Group, 助念会, whose main activity is to organize shifts of chanting groups so that a dying Buddhist will be accompanied by clear and continuous chanting of Amitabha throughout the dying process. In Southern California, there are these kind of groups now. In Honolulu, some Buddhist friends are preparing to organize such a group. This is a wonderful Buddhist social security system for providing peaceful and transcendental finales. May Amitabha Buddha bless the spreading and growth of help chant groups everywhere. The state of mind of a dying person is considered most crucial to his transcendence or rebirth. Hence, it is emphasized in Chinese Buddhist culture that one's final thoughts should be free from worldly attachments and be directed toward Buddha, Pure Land, bodhicitta, and enlightenment. One's family, relatives, and friends should withhold expressions of grief so as not to disturb the peace of mind of the dying person. They should instead help strengthen the dying person's Buddhist aspirations by kind advice and Buddhist practice. This is, of course, easier said than done. Hence, it is most important for people to understand these crucial matters and build the habit of doing some Buddhist practices well in advance. Chinese Buddhists would try to arrange for the dying person to stay in a peaceful and comfortable environment, preferably accompanied by the chanting of Amitabha, which may be sung by people or played by audio tapes. Nowadays, one is pronounced dead by a physician when the pulse and brain waves are gone. From the Buddhist point of view, even then, the person is still dying. The consciousness is still in the process of separating from the body. During this process, it would be very painful if the process is disturbed by movement of the body or abrupt environmental changes. Hence, it is taught that the body should not be disturbed in any way for at least 8 additional hours, preferably until it is cold all over. During this dying process, the accompanying chanting should continue. When a Buddhist staying in a hospital is pronounced hopeless for recovery, the family members should consider bringing the patient home so that the final hours will be more comfortable. In case the person is dying in a hospital, the family members should try to obtain approval for the body to remain untouched for 8 additional hours. If the dying person is in the intensive care unit, perhaps it can be arranged for the patient to be moved to an ordinary sick bed for the additional hours. Of all the apparatus attached to a dying patient, my view is that tubes in the mouth or nose should be removed when death is pronounced, while the rest can remain untouched. The reason is that the dying process has much to do with the movement of one's inner air, and tubes in respiratory passages may create undesirable outlets. If the family of the dying person does not approve of the practice of accompanying chanting, it can still be done at a distance because the spiritual help can convey in full strength over any physical distance. This is not a dogmatic assertion, but a truism borne out by experiences of practitioners. Some would object to this practice due to the misunderstanding that chanting Amitabha at this time amounts to hurrying goodbye before actual departure. In fact, the blessing of Amitabha Buddha is not limited to welcoming sentient beings to his pure land. His blessing can also help recovery from illness when dying is not irreversible. When one's death is imminent, all worldly endeavors to keep one alive become either futile or disturbances. During those hours, the only sources of comfort and stability are one's peace of mind born from meritorious deeds and spiritual support from others who are performing acts of merit on one's behalf. Therefore, we should begin the chanting practice or other meritorious activities for dying persons as soon as possible. A Buddhist's immediate response to life-threatening situations depends very much on his usual training in Buddhist practice. In case of accidental death, one is left alone with only one's spiritual maturity and Buddha's blessing to rely on. Hence, in order to be better prepared, one should build up a particular chanting practice so that even in case of accidental death, one's last thoughts will, as if by reflex, direct toward Buddha. The best way to build up this practice is to choose a particular holy name or mantra as one's lifesaver and form the habit of chanting it daily if not constantly. The Buddhist ideal conditions for dying are as follows. The consciousness is clear and focused, without fear, ready to depart from this world, and full of aspiration for Buddha, Pure Land, bodhicitta, and enlightenment. Since the movement of consciousness is inseparable from that of the subtle inner air, and the sitting posture is inductive to upward movement of the inner air, it is recommended for dying when feasible. In addition, if the environment is comfortable and supportive in the direction of pure thoughts, namely reminding and encouraging one's Buddhist aspirations, then it will be even better. These conditions are inductive to a good rebirth or transcendence from transmigration. In contrast to the ideal conditions, dying in sleep, in unconsciousness, under the influence of drugs, in accidents, in natural calamities, or by violent means, are causes of concern for the outcome of the departing consciousness. The Buddhist teaching of no killing applies to all sentient beings, including oneself and unborn babies. Sentient beings died of suicide or abortion are also considered to be in great need of spiritual help. Rituals of elevation and acts of merit should be performed for all these cases of death to lessen their suffering and to reduce the chances of their haunting the living. Subsection 3.2, Rituals and activities related to death. When the body of the deceased is completely cold, then it may be cleaned and dressed. If the limbs are stiff and cause difficulty in changing, use hot wet towels to wrap the joints, and then those spots will become soft and flexible again. If the eyes are not closed, cover them with hot wet towels, and then they may be closed by hand. Usually, new clothing, new shoes, jewelry, and ornaments are used to adorn the deceased. Rituals are performed and led with family members watching, and under the guidance of professionals, the corpse is sealed in a coffin. If the deceased is a married woman, someone from her maiden family should be present to witness her entering the coffin. Usually, the coffin stays in the funeral house with a small altar set up in front for displaying offerings of candles, flowers, incense, fruits, etc. The professionals will invite the soul to follow and lead it back home. In case of accidental death, it is customary for family members accompanied by professionals to go to the spot of accident to call and escort the soul home. This is usually done even when the place is far away and abroad. In the United States, the body of the deceased is usually stored in special refrigerators in the funeral house awaiting the memorial service ceremony. To present the deceased with a good appearance, sometimes the corpse is embalmed and cosmetics applied. Sometimes the corpse is cremated soon after death. Before the consciousness has left the body completely, the refrigeration, cremation, and use of chemicals may cause suffering to the consciousness. The family can delay the time of sending the body to the funeral house and decline the application of chemicals. At home, a white piece of paper with words announcing a death in the family is posted on the outside of the main entrance. Inside the house, a temporary altar is set up with the deceased photo and lotus seat, 莲座, placed at its center. A lotus seat consists of a paper or wooden rectangular block with the name of the deceased written on it. It is where the consciousness is supposed to reside temporarily. The usual offerings of flowers, candles, incense, food, and drink are displayed, and visitors and replenished now and then. During the next 49 days, this is the main place for rituals and for visitors to show respect. The visitors would offer incense, flowers, and food to the deceased, bow to the photo, and present money or posters with words of memorial or honoring nature written on them to the family. These posters, called Wan Lian, will be displayed at the memorial service to honor the deceased. Usually, the posters for funerals are in white. However, when the deceased have passed 80 years of age, red color may also be used to celebrate a good long life. Every 7th day after the death, the professionals are invited to come and perform rituals. This is based on the Buddhist teaching that the consciousness in the limbo state would go through a dying process every 7 days. Hence, it is high time to offer special help for transcendence or a good rebirth. Nowadays, some people hurry the process of these rituals into once every 3 days. This is not very considerate for the situation of the deceased. Nevertheless, it is still much better than not doing it at all. Depending on the family's affinity to particular schools or sects of Buddhism, they may employ the following special activities or rituals. Followers of Pure Land school usually chant Amitabha, Guan Yin Pusa, that's Avalokiteshvara, Pure Land Sutras, and the mantra of rebirth in the Pure Land, Wang Sheng Zhou. Sheets of paper with this mantra printed on them are burned as offering of blessing to the deceased. For example, here, this part is the mantra of rebirth in the Pure Land, Wang Sheng Zhou. And we burn this kind of paper. And on this one, there's an additional one called Jie Yuan Zhou. That means to resolve whatever conflict the deceased had with whatever being, even in past life. Yeah, those two mantras. Sheets of paper with this mantra printed on them are burned as offering of blessing to the deceased. Followers of Tantra usually use Dharani sheet. It's a piece of yellow silk with many mantras printed on it to cover the body of the deceased. I'll show you this one with the help of maybe you just hold it up here. No, this side up. No, it's lengthwise. Yeah. You see? Yeah, like that. See? It has so many. It has a pagoda on it, and on it are written many kinds of mantras representing the blessing of all kinds of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. This is used as a protection and a blessing for the deceased. That's for Dharani sheet. It's Toro Ni Bei in Chinese. Some would offer Vajra sand, which are obtained from holy places and blessed by some gurus in small containers to be worn by the corpse. For example, here I have one. This sands from the Ganges River and then blessed by some tantric gurus and then put into a small container and then worn by the deceased to receive the blessings. Yeah. All this I'm giving to the Buddhist study program after this, so they can keep it for display. Some would ask lamas or practitioners to perform poa. It's a tantric practice to transfer the consciousness of the deceased to the Pure Land, or perform fire sacrifices to Amitabha Buddha, or offer precious vases to the protectors, asking for their escort. For example, what I usually do is offer precious vases to the Dragon King. I will offer the vase into the ocean, Pacific Ocean, and ask the Dragon King to help. Some would follow the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which has several English renditions and at least one Chinese version, and try to give guidance to the deceased day by day. According to the oral teaching of my late guru, Yogi C.M. Chen, the Buddhas described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead cannot be seen by the consciousness of people who had not been initiated into this teaching. People often mistakenly assume that tantric experiences are automatic as long as the texts are obtained and followed to some extent. I would like to add the observation that even for initiated beings, their experiences will not be exactly as described in the textbook. A textbook offers a model, while each individual's particular situation and propensity will certainly add variations into the final result. Nevertheless, unless one has the supernatural ability to observe the situation of the deceased, one should simply follow the textbook and pray that these Buddhas will help where we cannot. The date for memorial service or farewell ceremony, usually called 告别式, is usually chosen according to Chinese lunar calendar, 农历, 依照阴历. It often involves calculation by experts to avoid conflict with the 8 words. That means the lunar birth hour and date of the family members, and be favorable for funeral proceedings. The memorial service is usually held at the funeral house or some public place and involves basically the same offerings and rituals, but on a much grander scale. It is customary for all relatives and friends together to show respect and listen to eulogies. The immediate family members wear traditional wears of mourning and often prostrate to the guests in return for their bowing to the deceased. Traditionally, the family members are supposed to wail continuously. Consequently, sometimes there are professional mourners hired to perform this difficult task. Nowadays, these kind of unnatural acts are no longer popular, and the traditional wares of mourning are often replaced by black robes. In all rituals related to death, various kinds of paper currency are burned for different kinds of deities. These paper currencies are either paper with gold or silver foil glued onto it, with auspicious signs and words printed on the gold foil, with images of auspicious deities printed on it, or so-called hell-bank notes. I was talking about 冥币, 寿金, 天公金. They are offerings, respectively, to the heavenly deities, the earth deities, and the delegates of Yanluo, and pocket money for the deceased. At the conclusion of the memorial service, the professional helpers will burn behind the scene paper models of house, TV, car, and many other utensils for the deceased. Some Buddhist teachers object to this kind of activities. I know of cases where the deceased appeared in a dream to some relative, asking for this kind of offering. I was once instructed in a dream by the local mountain god on which kind of paper currency they prefer. It seems to me that unless we know for sure that the deceased does not need this, it is better to make these offerings. After the memorial service, the coffin, accompanied by family members, relatives, and friends, will head for the burial ground. The burial ground is sometimes chosen by geomancy specialists to enhance the chance of prosperity for the posterity. After 8 or 10 years, the coffin will be unearthed, and then the bones will be gathered in an urn and be buried for good. In case of cremation, which is usually the case for members of the Sangha, people look into the ashes for sarilas, as signs of achievement in concentration meditation. If sarilas are found, they are usually honored on the altar and prostrated to for blessing. The cremated remains are gathered in a container and then either buried or stored in a pagoda for ashes, linguta, which are maintained by cemeteries or monasteries. Some Buddhists left will to have their ashes scattered into a river or ocean so as to develop karmic connection with beings that will feed on these ashes. At home or in a monastery, a lotus seed, lianzuo, will be established on the altar to represent the deceased. This is also the way to honor deceased whose remains cannot be restored to the family. By the way, one way to appease a haunting ghost is to establish for him a lotus seed in a monastery, because the ghost will then have easy access to offerings and Buddhist teachings. The family will continue to make offerings to the deceased, at least on the 1st and 15th of every lunar month. After 1 to 3 years, the lotus seed will be removed and considered merged into the lotus seed for all ancestors. This ancestral lotus seed stays on the altar for all posterity. Yes? Okay, yeah. Since you all have the written copy, and also due to the lack of time, we'll ask the respondent now to come up to the stage and ask me questions. Yes.
I would like to welcome 2 respondents who will help with the questions. We are honored to have from the, can you hear me in the back? We're honored to have with the, pardon me, we're honored to have from the State Department of Health, the Office of Communicable Diseases, Mr. Bart Aronoff. We have many spirits here, maybe very also, I'll just work from this microphone. Again, let me introduce to your far right, Mr. Bart Aronoff, who is from the Department of Health, the Office of Communicable Diseases. He himself has lived in Asia and Thailand for a number of years. He's also worked with children, and one of the topics we've not raised is the issue of children and the dying process. He has worked with children in elementary school, so he has a varied career, and we look forward to his questions and comments. And in the center is Mrs. Chung, who really, we are so indebted to her because she's been instrumental in bringing Dr. Lin to us, and has been a long-time student of Dr. Lin. So we also are calling upon her to ask him some questions to draw out some of his great wealth of knowledge. So we will begin some general discussion with their questions and then open things to the floor for a few minutes. So first of all, could we ask, I think we'll ask Dr. Lin to return to the podium, and I'll get out of the way, and we will have first Bart ask some questions and then Mrs. Chung. other. Thank you.
Good morning, Dr. Lin. That was a very interesting lecture to me, and I look forward to reading the rest of it. One of the things that we're working with is the AIDS epidemic, in which people frequently in the middle of life are put into a struggle for several years to try to stay alive, knowing that they will die. I wonder what Chinese Buddhism may have to offer to people in this condition who are not Buddhist by training or tradition.
Well, first, I think we should explain to them that the fact of impermanence is such that he may live longer than the healthier one in front of him. Impermanence, applies to all of us. We are all, actually in danger of death within a few days or within a few years. So first help them to realize that they are not, in a sense, not in a worse situation. And on the other hand, we can tell them that actually, from the spiritual point of view, they are in a better position in the sense that they can see now, maybe in 5 years they will die. Most people don't have even this kind of concept never occurred to them until the very last moment. So they have time to prepare for death, while others who lack this kind of awareness don't. And then tell them that, okay, since death is inevitable, the important thing is, and it applies to all of us, so the important thing is, how do we make use of the rest of our life? Of course, this is not easy, that you just think about it and then you can be happy. So tell them that the basic Buddhist practices are very important. And also, because by doing those practices, they have, for example, chanting, they have something to rely on that can divert their attention from their worries and go out, And also explain to them that now they are the best living example, they are the best teachers who can tell other people, be mindful about impermanence. So instead of just thinking of this as a bad situation, make use of this to help other people become aware of impermanence. Because other people are still engulfed in worries. They don't realize how precious, how lucky they are that they are still alive and they are without AIDS, right? So show them all this, then I think they will find the direction.
Since we just mentioned about
Or what have I done to cause others suffer? That's the only thing that makes a difference at the moment of death, whether you will be peaceful or not. So once we reflect upon that, we should review our life and set our priority in another light. Because usually our priority is just how to improve our life. But sometimes people forget about what in the end comes. So that's the second point. And also, once you are aware of impermanence, knowing that death can come to us at any moment, then you appreciate more what the others are doing for you. Because their life is also fragile, impermanent, and right now they're helping you. Instead of helping their own relatives or doing something for themselves, then you appreciate more how we help each other. And also, at the time of death, nothing can really help you except your own merits and also others' spiritual help, in the sense that like Allah is praying for you or doing some good things in your name. Those at that moment will bring you peace. So, knowing this, we should devote more our energy on the spiritual practices so that at a crucial moment, we can give true help to each other. Yeah, I think that's the main point.
Yes, Dr. Lin. You've talked about, in your lecture, the cycle of lives.
Yes.
Within just the one present life, there's a cycle, going from infant to baby to young child and so forth.
Right.
Could you comment, please, then, on how one's understanding of death matures or develops across the time in one life?
Yes. I think, when we are very young, we don't think about it. However, actually, it occurs to all of us at any age. But as you grow older, if you are lucky to grow older, then you encounter more and more the real cases of impermanence. And I think that's when you begin to take notice of this. Yeah. However, it's very helpful to read some books, on Buddhism or on Christianity, because they all talk about this. And those are accumulation of other people's experiences, so they may direct our attention to more important aspects of death.
Are there any questions from the audience? We'll have a chance for a general discussion later in the morning, but is there any pressing question now?
Yes?
Is the reason that there is wailing at the funeral and either from the family or from the professionals is because they restrain themselves at the time of the person dying, so that then the people, the family members can then release their grief in a larger way because they're supposed to, be still for the dying person?
The question was about wailing at the funeral.
Well, I think, traditionally, you are expected to do that because they think you're supposed to show, grief. But nowadays, the professionals, unless in countryside, no longer this kind of practice is popular. But for the family members, it's just natural. Yeah. Some would, if you don't try to say something to the deceased, you won't cry. But if you try, the moment you try, it comes. Yeah. Yes.
How is praying helpful for the dying person? How can merit be transferred from one consciousness to another?
Could you please repeat the question for the audience?
Yes. How is prayer and the transfer of merit from one person to the other, how does that take place at the time of dying?
Yeah. Actually, it's not just limited to the time of dying. The prayer helps anytime, anywhere. Because, we are bound, limited by our sense organs. So we think, we are all separate individuals. But the spiritual truth, which is not a dogmatic assertion, but things that you will experience if you go on the spiritual path and do practice, is that we are all one. There's no separation. And if I talk about practitioner experience, of course, you just have to believe, but there's an even better study on the effect of prayer by a group of 3 or 4 physicians. I heard about this on public radio in San Francisco area, 91.7 FM. Those doctors began as non-believers of the power of prayers. And they want to see if prayer can really help healing process. So they have chosen 400 patients. And the patients, nurses, and doctors involved in this study, none of them know anything about the existence of such a study. So they are unaware of what's going on. And the result of the study is the control group and the experimental group, compare them. Those being prayed for are doing much better. And they further distinguish among those being prayed into two groups. One group is prayer with specific requests, like, oh, right now he has certain disease, so I ask you to heal. This is Christian prayer. I ask the God to heal, certain specific disease. The other group, just a general prayer, just, oh, may the best, in your will be achieved, something like that. And the result is that those without special requests are doing better. Why? Because whenever that explains why Buddha taught us to be selfless. Because all the things that you think is best for you, maybe not really so. Because each one of us is limited by his knowledge, his ability to see things, right? So the result is like that. And those people who study this also try like praying for the growth of plants, and they find that those plants that are prayed for doing better. Yes. And my own experiences, it's really like that. For example, I was invited to give lecture in Malaysia in 1993. The person who invited me told me that when his father passed away due to heart attack, after that, his mother always saw the father, dream of the father, and the father always black face. But after I offered a precious vase to the Dragon King, then the father came back with white face. Yeah. That's just one of the examples. Yes.
We wish to express our appreciation for the large perspective that you offer, and especially the role of compassion and selflessness in the caring for one another at all times, as well as especially at death. And I hope at lunchtime, and by the way, there are still some tickets. I hope if any of you would like a good Chinese vegetarian lunch, so we invite you to purchase some right away, perhaps just now at the break. And we'd like to, at the lunchtime, if Bart Aronoff is still here, it might be a good time to talk with him about his work and his ideas, and also to thank Mrs. Chung for her efforts in bringing Dr. Lin. And now I think we're going to allow Dr. Lin to take a little rest.
Thank you. And I would like to thank you very much. During your break, I'll pray the 5 variation chanting of Amitabha. It's very nice and melodious. Yeah. Let's see.
The chanting, Chinese chanting,
Yes.
Chinese Buddhist chanting is distinctive and quite beautiful, so it's wonderful. Look forward to that. I think our next speaker is Reverend Fritz Pritchell from Hospice Hawaii, so maybe we will invite him to come onto the stage. He also combines the two areas of the spiritual work and hospital physical caring. He is a Lutheran minister, has been in Hawaii for many years. He has been working at Hospice Hawaii, which, as you know, has services for those who wish to die with their families at home. But first, let us thank then Bart and Mrs. Chung and Dr. Lin.
I'm going to be this way.
You want to stand up break for just a minute or two here, just to stretch around? Okay. I really appreciate being a part of this very rich program that extends over several weeks, and especially the fact that it brings together town and gown, as we used to say, or the community of the university, as well as people from the community to dialogue, I think, on very essential and very important matters. I also am happy to be representing Hospice Hawaii, as a chaplain with that program. Certainly have a lot of experiences dealing with the death and dying process, not only in the Buddhist community, but also in the wider community of Hawaii, and that in itself is such a rich mixture of traditions. As DrLin was speaking initially in his paper, he mentioned the notion of transcendence several times, and it called to my mind a book that I read maybe about 15 years ago by a sociologist named Peter Berger, and he entitled the book Rumor of Angels. And perhaps it was written at a time in our own society where the notion of transcendence or the notion of spirituality was not yet such a common term. But that title was very suggestive in itself, that even as a sociologist, he was suggesting there was that element of transcendence that was evident even in some of our social institutions. In the sense of law and order, he suggests law and order is implying that there is something beyond our own human institutions that gives us some kind of standard of things of rightness. And at times we don't always live up to that, so we try to establish some kind of rules for ourselves. To carry along with DrLin's five-fold structure this morning, I think that Peter Berger also mentioned 5 of these things, see if I can remember them. Besides that sense of law and order, he's also said that the sense of punishment implies within itself that same sense of rightness, that sometimes things happen within our society that are so horrifying to us or so unacceptable to us that we simply say that is not right. And where do we get that sense of rightness from? Not simply from ourselves, but from some higher quality or higher insight, perhaps, that transcends our own human views and human perspectives. Sometimes we try to step outside of ourselves and beyond ourselves to incorporate and cultivate that sense of rightness. A third rumor of angel that Peter Berger identified was the sense of play. At times we simply lose ourselves in playfulness, and we lose a sense of time. Time is no longer important. It's playtime. It's not real time. Time is, in a sense, dismissed. We are simply giving ourselves to the moment. Our own attentiveness is all wrapped up in that moment of play. And that also suggests a kind of transcending of perhaps even of our own impermanence at times, that there is a quality of that kind of eternal nowness in just that moment of play. Similarly, he says, humor does the same kind of thing or a similar thing. By laughing at ourselves, by taking ourselves and recognizing our own limitations as human beings, our sense of mortality, and saying, you know, that's all we are. We're at times we're a combination of breath and mud, and we can't expect more from ourselves than humanness. But at times that humanness can be very great and very, very dignified, but at the same time it's limited. And we can laugh about ourselves, whether it's Woody Allen or whether it's, I think you probably already heard the quotation, and at least it's my quotation from Woody Allen on death and dying. It's not so much that I have anything against dying, it's just that I don't want to be there when it happens. So even to be able to laugh at ourselves in our mortality, in our humanness, is a part of that kind of rumor of transcendence that Berger talks about. The 5th one that he talks about is death. Death is a rumor of an angel, or some kind of suggestion that there is more to us than we simply have within this temporal arrangement and in this particular life. That death itself, in the act of burying, what other species buries its dead? In the act of burying, we are honoring something about ourselves that at times can't quite be said. The hopes, the dreams, the memories come together in a way that say there's more to us than simply this. And how to say it, how to ritualize it, how to chant it, how to sing it. We've got all kinds of traditions, all kinds of ways of doing that from our own backgrounds, from our own religious perspectives. As if somehow we know, perhaps intuitively or mysteriously, that there's more to us than the times that we can say. Maybe this is the day for fivefoldness. I'm going to talk about 5 things in connection with hospice and why. Guiding principles that I associate with a hospice program. As you know, a hospice, as it's been designed here in the modern age, is designed to take care of terminally ill people. Those who have been given a diagnosis or a prognosis by a physician of having approximately 6 months or less to live. And the hospice program designs or aims to have that kind of death be as comfortable as possible in a very familiar setting, oftentimes a home setting or a home-like setting, apart from a hospital or some other kind of institution. One of the principles that guides us is that we neither seek to hasten one's death nor to prolong the life. We know that the dying is a process, and we try to honor that as a process in a very, very natural way. We can argue about what natural means at times, what other kinds of interventions we may use in that process in order to make things as comfortable and as meaningful as possible for a patient. But still, it is a process which we honor with the input and the freedom and the perspective of the patient and the family involved. It's not as if hospice comes in with some kind of preset agenda and says, this is how you have to do it. We really try to honor that kind of unique perspective and tradition of the patient and the family. It's a process at times, I think, in which a great deal of discovery can occur. I think it was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross who, in her survey of people after some time, asked how they would like to die. And after having some association with the whole instruction in the death and dying process, many of them finally said, I would like to have about 3 or 4 months pre-warning about my own dying. Oftentimes, I think the person on the street might say that I want to die suddenly or quickly, without a long pre-warning. But that sense of pre-warning, or that sense of one's impermanence, and the knowledge and the awareness of impermanence, has the opportunity of being a discovery period of time, of learning so much about oneself on the inside, about learning about so much about the dynamics within the family, and about completing unfinished business, about taking care of matters, about saying things that need to be said that haven't been said, about taking back things that were said that shouldn't have been said. That kind of discovery, that kind of even process of enlightening, I think, can go on within those last weeks and months of life. I remember a patient, I'll call him Ed. He was about my age, which is always a bit jarring to me, to be with a patient who's about my age. He had been in the military as a career person, and he and his wife had no children. His favorite activity was golf. Though he had grown up in the Buddhist tradition, he had never practiced actively in the Buddhist tradition. Golf was his game. It was really where he gave his delight and his joy every weekend. And as he was sitting in his own condominium on his lanai, now with lung cancer and unable to participate in that game anymore, he kind of looked back on his life, and he looked out over a big park area. It wasn't a golf course, but it almost looked like a golf course. And he said, you know, for the first time, I'm smelling the trees. See, where did you get that from? Because he said it without any bitterness at all. no rancor, no regret. It was the sense that here and now was a moment of pure joy, just appreciation, as if it was a moment of discovering and enlightenment, and he carried no bitterness or regret towards anybody else. He didn't blame himself. He was just here and now with the fullness of that moment of the trees smell so good. That's a part of the possibility, I think, even in these last weeks and days of life, of a person being able to discover that kind of quality, that kind of here and nowness. I've also selected 5 poems, and some of them come from the Chinese masters. This poem sounds a little bit like it, who simply accepted the ordinariness of his life in an extraordinary way. This is by Layman Pang of the 8th century. It's from a book by Stephen Mitchell's Sacred Anthology of Poetry, The Enlightened Mind. My daily affairs are quite ordinary, but I'm in total harmony with them. I don't hold on to anything, don't reject anything. Nowhere an obstacle or conflict. Who cares about wealth and honor? Even the poorest thing shines. My miraculous power in spiritual activity, drawing water and carrying wood. Or Ed might say, smelling the trees. A second principle that guides us, I think, in our hospice care is to provide palliative care. Not to seek treatment so much for the disease, but to seek comfort. And maybe as these principles overlap a bit, but as we often suggest, there can be a lot of healing that goes on in the last weeks and months of life without necessarily a cure happening. The healing, as I suggest, can be that inner kind of healing, that sense of acceptance and self-acceptance and self-awareness that realizes it has a fullness of life to itself. It can be a healing that goes on within members of the family, within relationships. It can provide that sense and that quality of peace that seems so desirable as a mode of parting and a mode of transition. A second poem. Again by Layman Pang. When the mind is at peace, the world too is at peace. Nothing real, nothing absent. Not holding on to reality, not getting stuck in the void. You are neither wise nor holy, just an ordinary fellow who has completed his work. And to feel that quality, to feel that sense of self-acceptance, feels like a real quality of tranquility to me. One of the things that I often look for when visiting a patient, whether Buddhist, Christian, or not affiliated with any particular tradition, is to find the inner imagery with which that person may have been living. Some kind of picture, some kind of vision, some kind of anchor, perhaps, on the basis of which that person has lived. And oftentimes I go back to my own experience and say that whenever I'm in stress and so on, I go back to Colorado, my home state. And in Colorado, there's this big mountain, 14,000 feet high. And there's a little brook that comes off of it through this property that I'm acquainted with. And that little brook feels like an umbilical cord. It just feels like it hooks me up to Mother Mountain. And it's a place where I feel there is such belonging and acceptance. I don't have to do anything, be anything, say anything, or think anything, just to be there and feel that I belong. And often I ask them, do you have anything like that in your mind, in your life, in your experience? And one woman, when I asked her that, almost immediately, without hesitation, said, yes, now I know what you're talking about, the monkey pod tree. That's where I go, the monkey pod tree. And in my own mind, I go and sit under the monkey pod tree, and I just feel that it's full of life. And it didn't take us long to jump from just that real monkey pod tree to that kind of imagery, that sacred imagery of tree of life. And how that tree of life, the axis mundi, that root and that center of all the world, somehow is symbolized in a tree like that. Within our own body, which in a sense is like a tree, that houses all sorts of beings and experiences. And where the roots of our tradition go down deep, deep, deep into places that we can't see, into our deep unconsciousness. And how the branches that go out house all kinds of other life. And we become a source of goodness and blessing to others, and we live for and with and from each other in many ways. It feels to me that in identifying that kind of imagery within a person's life, from whatever tradition they come, may really enhance and help them discover that sense of healing and wholeness and a sense of peace. A third guiding principle within the hospice movement is to be very, very conscious and deliberate about controlling pain. It is one of really the foremost things within the entire international hospice movement that really stands out. And I think within the hospice movement in general, the medical consultants that come through the hospice movement are oftentimes the experts in pain management within the community. I feel that way about our own medical consultants now. They know the latest, they know the kind of combinations, they know the kinds of things, especially with deep physical pain, that can be done. Pain interrupts so much. It just disrupts things. It feels like it just grips things at times and dominates one's attention so that there is room for nothing else. When pain is that severe, when that physical pain is that severe, it wants to be, I think, dismissed and counteracted and eliminated. So that it's possible for other movements to occur, other energies, other spirits, if you like, to engage in some kind of process. Pain at times has that kind of gripping and interfering and obstructive function. At other times, pain awakens us. At other times, pain awakens us to who we are. If it's not too much, if it doesn't override us, if it doesn't overwhelm us, pain can have the function of raising questions about who I am. What's going on with my body? We know that with our own small aches and pains at times, I think. What's going on? I'm almost afraid to ask. I don't even know if I want to know. But it's a self-directed question. Something is going on. It alerts us to something. It alerts us. And whether it's physical pain or some other kind of pain, the spiritual kind of pain, it can function in that same way of alerting us to some, I'm calling out attention. I want you to listen, our body is saying, or our spirit is saying, or our relationships are saying. Please pay attention to me. If possible, we want to work through that pain, not simply to dismiss it all, but to work through it. With pain medication, if that's necessary. With other kinds of interventions, with simply being there, with using, Stephen Levine has provided us, I think, with excellent exercise and meditations and so on, influenced, I think, by his own encounter with Buddhism. But excellent exercise and meditations on guided mindfulness and on the release of pain and on the letting go. The whole dying process is a bit of letting go. letting go of things that we've been used to doing, but also, if possible, of letting go of the kind of pain that we may be in control of ourselves. A third poem as I say, that the pain so often directs attention just to ourselves and to our own identity of who we are. This is a poem by Tung Shan, 9th century. If you look for the truth outside yourself, it gets farther and farther away. Today, walking alone, I met him everywhere I stepped. He is the same as me, yet I am not him. Only if you understand in this way will you merge with the way things are. I think there is such wisdom always that resides within each of us. But no matter what wisdom is there or what imagery we might have, I'm very cautious about universalizing that particular imagery throughout the whole world, as if that is the ultimate truth. We may share in that sense of wisdom and truth and know that something of deep importance and truth and value lies within us. But truth and wisdom can't be reduced to that, I think the poem is saying. He is the same as me, yet I am not him. This particular poem was selected by a patient that we had who was going through both physical and spiritual pain himself. And I loaned him this book. And he picked this one out. He said, read this one at my memorial service. I think somehow he knew that there was some instinctive reservoir of wisdom within himself, but yet it was also outside. A fourth principle that guides the hospice program is our understanding of holistic treatment or in working as an interdisciplinary team. We really have quite a cadre of people who are a part of the hospice program and who make themselves available and offer services to any patient and or family. Obviously, the nurse becomes a kind of a case manager and the quarterback of the team in many ways. Home health aides, volunteers, chaplains, social worker, other therapists at times can be called upon in particular situations. But it gets to be a kind of a sense in which we're recognizing, again, we're not reducing this experience just to one single thing. It has a fullness or a wholeness about it that encompasses all the aspects of our life. One of the poems that I think really reflects that comes out of, I believe Green Gulch is a Zen Buddhist community, is it? Okay. This comes out of the Green Gulch community. And it says something about the interdependency that really I think reflects, it's my understanding too, that we really do live within and from each other in such deep ways. There are so many things that I picked up, as just the experience of being within the hospice from patients and families. I feel so enriched with the things that they've given to me. And I hope at times there's that kind of mutuality of sharing back and forth. Stephanie Kaza writes, we live by the sun, we feel by the moon, we move by the stars. We live in all things live in us. We eat from the earth, we drink from the rain, we breathe of the air. We live in all things live in us. We call to each other, we listen to each other, our hearts deepen with love and compassion. We live in all things live in us. We depend on the trees and animals, we depend on the earth. our minds open with wisdom and insight. We live in all things live in us. We dedicate our practice to others. We include all forms of life. We celebrate the joy of living, dying. We live in all things live in us. We are full of life, we are full of death. We are grateful for all beings and companions. A final principle that guides us, I think, within the hospice program is we recognize the impact that this experience of dying and death has upon the family. And one of the principles of hospice in general throughout the world is to recognize that this experience of dying and death has its repercussions and its impact. And so built into a hospice program is a follow-up program, a bereavement program. So we say that we will follow a patient's family and loved ones for up to a year following the death within the family. That period of bereavement, even as we've heard about the rituals that are so rich within the Buddhist tradition, have ways, again, of perhaps encouraging the transition of the departed, but also a way of trying to heal that which has been lost. Real loss has occurred. We cannot replace what has been lost. But as one man said, in relating what was going on within his own family, when his grandfather had died, who had been a tailor, he said, as the family was sitting around telling stories of the grandfather, he said, we're doing just what grandfather used to do. That is, we're just taking a needle and thread and we're sewing around the edges of the hole so that it doesn't fray. The hole in the cloth is there. But the intentional sense of mourning and gratitude and appreciation is a part of the process of the healing. Sometimes that goes quickly, sometimes it takes a long time. There are no particular rules written down in any kind of stone how that process of bereavement or mourning occurs. So we really, I think, have to be quite individualized and sensitive and very listening, I think, to all those people who are involved in that kind of process. It's where a sense of compassion and understanding can really be put into use very effectively. The final poem is not by a Chinese Buddhist, as I understand it. Thich Nhat Hanh, I think, is the Vietnamese Buddhist who is contemporary. The last stanza of his poem ends with, let the door of my heart, so that the door of my heart can be left open, the door of compassion. And that this is what I'm associating a little bit with this compassion of being a companion with those who are bereaved. And at times in that bereavement process, we have to perhaps name things or describe what's going on, or be so observant that we can say, do you know that this is going on with you? And so that last stanza says, please call me by my true name so I can wake up. And so the door of my heart can be left open, the door of compassion. The full poem is like this. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks, and I am the arms merchant selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee on a small boat, who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am the pirate. My heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. I am a member of the Politburo, with plenty of power in my hand, and I am the man who has to pay his debt of blood to my people, dying slowly in a forced labor camp. My joy is like spring, So warm it makes flowers bloom in all walks of life. My pain is like a river of tears, so full it fills up the 4 oceans. Please call me by my true name, so I can hear all my cries and my laughs at once, so I can see that my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true names, so I can wake up, and so the door of my heart can be left open, the door of compassion. Thank you.
I should comment that Fritz has been a member of the steering committee when we began meeting to help prepare this program well over a year ago, and I think you'll understand why things have turned out so well under his helpful guidance. Before we turn to the next part of the program, are there any questions anybody has about either what Reverend Frischel said? I'm just thinking that's probably the first time a Christian minister has ever spoken here in this temple. I should ask, but probably it's the first. Yes.
I'm thinking from a Christian standpoint, what do you tell your people when they include Jesus in their terminal conversation?
From a Christian standpoint, what do I do when people refer to Jesus within their imagery or religious talk?
I'm understanding that you dwell with the people on quite an intellectual level, but you can encounter terminal patients who cannot match you. Can they talk about Jesus and what he means to them?
Certainly. I really try to meet people where they are with their own religious imagery. If that is the imagery that really is healing and supportive to them, that is what, and there's some very simple, I hope very simple kinds of statements and words that can be said in connection with that can give comfort and solace to people that way.
Are there any other questions? Are you going to be here at lunch? See, he's working on the weekends. Is there any other question about Hospice Hawaii, perhaps?
What is the symbolism of this meal of the Lord?
Since Fritz knows Chinese, Fritz told me before our meeting this morning that it means the Dharma wheel. The kanji on the right-hand side means Dharma wheel, and on the left-hand side it is constantly turning. Now, Dharma, Sanskrit word, means teaching and truth. It is cognate actually with the Chinese word Tao, which is in a sense the truth of the universe, the truth of ultimate reality. And it's the truth that the Buddha was enlightened to, and which is saving truth. And that it symbolizes a wheel that's constantly on the move, constantly available to us, constantly manifesting itself in every turn of life, in every situation. And it has 8 spokes, so it's not just theory, it's practice and practical steps to do. And so the Eightfold Noble Path is symbolized there by the 8 spokes of the wheel. So it's very appropriate, since Fritz works with imagery, that we should know what the images are that appear behind him. And the swastika is an ancient Indian symbol, thousands and thousands of years old. And you find it very central in Jainism and Buddhism. It became an official Chinese character. In fact, it was brought into China in the year 690 AD. And Empress Wu, I should say, made it an official Chinese character in 690 to represent or be the equivalent of the word wan, meaning 10,000. Chinese are very modest in terms of their numerical systems, and so 10,000 meant an infinite number. And often you'll find it, and going both ways. You know, we talk about reverse or clockwise or counterclockwise celestial. It means that the Buddhists have practiced for an infinite period of time, have achieved an infinite numbers of capacities, and have an infinite number of blessings, therefore, to bestow on people. And so it refers to that infinite number of teachings, of methods, of blessings, and of merit found within the Buddhist community and tradition. Thank you for asking about that. And I think we have actually an infinite number of flowers to put over Fritz. We give our infinite apologies to our previous speakers. We will get these to you tonight. Well, thank you very much, Fritz. We are delighted that next on our program we will have 3 eminent members of our community, and I'll ask them to make their way to the podium. The first is Mrs. Yuk-Pang Law. Mrs. Law is often affectionately known as the informal mayor of Chinatown. Born and raised in Hong Kong, she also graduated from McKinley High School and University of Hawaii, and for many years has worked with as a bilingual social service worker at the Kaliti Palama Immigrant Service Center. In fact, for 16 years, I have here in my notes. And she works especially helping immigrants who come to Hawaii with problems that they may have, especially when they do not know the language English.